Welcome to this latest edition of the Ril Dil podcast, The Wire Remixed, season two, episode 2, Collateral Damage. As always, I'm joined by one Robert Sapp. How you doing, Mr. Sapp?
You doing good, doing good.
Hope everybody out there is being safe. As we, if you watch the news, you see the numbers spiking across the country, especially in the South and West. So, take all precautions. Definitely be safe out there. This episode, again, was directed by Ed Bianchi, who also directed the season premiere of season 2. He directed this episode. This episode, like the first episode, was ranked low in terms of Vulture magazine, 59 by Vulture magazine. This episode was ranked. So Vulture was not in love with this episode, just like they weren't in love with the previous episode that was ranked 60th. Collateral damage, an injury inflicted on something other than an intended target. So we saw how that played out over the course of this episode. The epigraph was by McNulty. They can chew you up, but they got to spit you out. Opening scene, we get introduced to the medical examiner who we will see a lot of over the course of the seasons, Doc Frazier. He looks like a medical examiner. You couldn't have a better person being cast as a medical examiner. You're talking about in terms of how he looks. Like this dude looks like a mortician of medical examiners. They discovered, of course, they're continuing from last episode where they discovered all the 13 bodies. Now you have B.D. Russell along with some other policing agencies, basically just trying to determine who is going to be responsible for any type of investigation. Now, at this point, it has not been determined that they are murders, that they are homicides at this point, which we'll get to. But B.D. Russell and the port get the unenviable task of being the one who has the murders, but has the bodies in terms of paperwork. And one of the guys told B.D. Russell, all you have here, if you take these bodies, all you'll have is just a bunch of paperwork. Because at that point, they did not know that they were murders. And what were your thoughts on this scene, this opening scene?
Yeah, kind of like as you said, this is the politics of it all, for lack of a better word, of who's going to take it and why. And because they're not murders at this point in time, people are much more willing to take it than not to take it.
So you have Frank Sabaka, Nick, Spiros, Sergey, and meeting up at the Greek's place of business, which is that little deli called Johnny's. The Greek, before sees Sabaka out the window and basically leaves the scene. He doesn't leave the place, but leaves the area to where he couldn't be seen by Frank and Nikki once they got into the restaurant or into the deli, which just kind of like which found a little bit curious, not surprising, but kind of curious. So Spiros is trying to explain to Frank what happened. Frank, again, is basically demanding to know what's going on. And Spiros basically says, Frank is pointing fingers. Spiros is basically saying, do you really want to know what were in those cans? And we get introduced to a whole nother level of, criminal activity in regards to the Greeks. They're just not moving drugs or things of that nature, or products or cars. They're moving bodies in terms of human trafficking. And Frank reluctantly still stays with the Greeks. Spiros, of course, Frank is angry about the bodies coming on his port. He knows it's going to draw some of the attention by police. And Spiros calmly says to Frank, that we're angry too. We're looking into it. We're going to handle it. very calmly, very calm, and under control. And then you have, again, of course, again, the Greek is watching all this not from afar, but watching this from somewhat from a distance. What were your thoughts on this scene?
Yeah, this is them kind of circling the wagons for their own organization, the Greeks, or what is known as the Greeks at this point in time. So yeah, you got kind of like a internal analysis of where they need to go next, as they're trying to find out information and calm Frank down at the exact same time.
And also, you have Frank realizing that he is like I think this might be the first time where Frank kind of, not, I'm not gonna say feels guilty, but kind of realizes how deep he is into this. Maybe he could justify, you know, disappearing cans of cars or products, but now we're talking about human bodies. It takes it to a whole nother level, and that's why he's just that's why he was just angry. On top of the fact that these are 13-day girls, I don't think he didn't realize how deep he was into this, and maybe he doesn't completely know, and he doesn't completely know who exactly that he's dealing with from that standpoint.
Agreed.
So you have Brianna and Avon discussing the situation with Roberto and the drug connect. Avon, Brianna said, tells Avon that the money has been sent back, and basically the relationship with Roberto is dead. He gives her another drug connect to look into, or that he's going to get Sprint Stringer to look into, and that's this guy from Atlanta at a rim shop. Brianna explains, they're barely holding on to the towers. In her words, holding on to them with scraps. She also explains her concern, of course, for her son D'Angelo. Avon, she basically, snaps on Avon when he says that he hasn't been able to get to see D'Angelo. Says that D'Angelo has kind of been blowing him off, making adjustments. And Brianna says, hey, he took the years. He needs to be cared for. He hasn't seen his child. Donette hasn't brought his child up here. And Avon says, I'm not gonna let anything happen to him, and I will put strain on Donette as well. So you have, the interactions of a brother and sister who care for each other, love each other, but you have a mother who, is on the edge in terms of what her son is dealing with inside in the prison, and what he's, in terms of the weight that he's carrying for the family. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, and she knows, like Avon doesn't know. She knows how close he was. Um, so she has the extra added ability of knowledge of like where her son was at. So when she's saying he needs to be taken care of, like she's not saying that just because. Like she knows he needs to be taken care of.
Yeah,
So
Avon. To your point, I'm sorry. To your point, Avon does not know how close D'Angelo came to flipping. So that's a
no,
very important point to note.
no. So she basically there to tell Avon all the ways he's messing up.
Yeah,
Like from her perspective, it's all falling apart.
yeah, and
Or it feels like it's falling apart at the very least.
yeah, and she, she's being kind when she says that we're holding on to the towers with scraps. The bottom line is they have no control over the towers at this point. They don't have any drugs, and
Right.
so it's like, I think she wanted, I don't. She knows Avon, so I don't think she wanted to give. She wanted to be firm with Avon, but she really could have, she really could have really went in all the way in on Avon in terms of saying, look, yeah, we don't have any towers. So I think she was very careful from that standpoint, despite how angry she was in regards to D'Angelo. She still was very careful in terms of how she chose some of her words with Avon. So you have Monk and Minotti are in the police center. The police center, but Monk and Minotti are eating crab legs and drinking beer in the interrogation room. Monk, of course, continues to ask about Omar, and McNulty, is basically, Minotti is looking at a newspaper about the dead girls. Monk basically says you're a special kind of asshole to McNulty. But again, McNulty continues to blow Monk off about the Omar, which we'll see how that plays out over the course of a couple episodes. What were your thoughts on this interaction?
Yeah, this is scene to set up McNulty seeing the girls.
Yeah. He sees that article, sees the girls. Now he still is in the mode of he's still at a place where he is not all the way in terms of the case, but now seeing that start, it has piqued his interest, and he's still trying to fuck over Rawls and that, from that standpoint, still into that in that mindset. But now, to your point, he sees that article, he sees the newspaper article clipping or whatever, and now his interest is piqued from that standpoint. Plus, he's looking for something to keep his interest as far as besides being on the boat. So that you had that going on as well.
In this particular scene, he's still very much interested in fucking overalls.
Right. No question. Horseface, Frank, and Ott, one of the stevedores, they get harassed. Ott comes in and says that that the police are harassing the stevedores' vehicles at the docks. You said, and they basically you see Carver writing tickets, and then Frank Sabaka comes out of his place, his little office, basically says, we've been parking here for years, like, what's going on, to Carver. Carver is basically saying, look, I'm just doing my job. I work for, my boss is, Stan Valchek, and, and Sabaka basically says, you work for a gaping asshole. And then, Herbert, not Kurt, but Carver's like, yeah, two of them. And then he uses one of Daniel's famous lines in terms of saying it's chain of command. The first appearance by Carver this season, in a new position as a sergeant, now working under Stan Valchek in the Southeast. What were your thoughts?
This is it's definitely like a lot of setup, and so the big thing to pay attention in this episode, and this scene kind of outlines it, is like this is the start of the petty that will eventually lead to more substantive stuff. But this is the beginning of the petty that leads to all that. So that's what this episode is about.
Yeah, no question about it. Weebay and Officer Tillman back in prison. Tillman is trashing Weebay's room. He finds some Playboy magazines. He tears down his posters, and more importantly, he throws the Weebay's fish, which Weebay loves, on the floor. Tells him to clean it up. He yokes Weebay up, grabs his shirt. Again, at this point, we don't know why this is occurring. What Tillman's problem with Weebay is. We'll find out But at this point, this was, you know, a setup for a lot of things to come, not just in this episode, but in episodes to come.
Yeah. 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 This continues the petty train going. You know, I mean, and
Well,
petty for a legitimate reason.
yeah,
Still petty.
this wasn't petty when we find out the reason. This was
No. It's petty. But it's petty with a legitimate reason, because trashing his room don't have nothing to do with bringing so and so to justice. So, and given the way that I'm viewing petty, especially in terms of this episode, is you're making in both cases, both a lot of individuals are making some very petty actions in this episode that will have long and far-reaching consequences for them.
Absolutely. You have Valchek and Sabaka discussing the stained glass window. Valchek goes to Sabaka's office. They get into an argument, and we find out that this is you know, there's a reason for the dislike, going back to when they were like kids. Well, going back to when Sabaka tells the story about his sisters not, you know, going to a dance, and Valchek was a guy that was always an asshole that nobody liked, and so there's some family history with the Valcheks and Sabaka's from that standpoint. Sabaka's, I think his father knew Valchek, and basically there's absolutely no respect either way from either one of these dudes. Valchek spits on Sabaka's floor as he's walking out, and Valchek, basically threatens Sabaka, and Valchek lets Sabaka know, I'm the one that was that got your people written up as far as those tickets, and he says, unless you want my finger in your eye, back off from the stained glass window from that standpoint. And basically Sabaka tells him, go fuck himself in his main words. And Valchek walks out. So we kind of get some in-depth backstory in terms of why these guys don't, particularly care for each other.
Yeah, definitely. The most interesting part of that scene was the kind of history between the two. What I took away from it was, again, what's most important to the creators of the show is highlighting, the decay of urban society, and so the decay of cities. And so this is another example of showing two characters that have deep historical ties to the city and have been around for a very long time. And both characters are presumably, I don't even say presumably, it's by the way that they talk, are from same nationalities, because as you know, urban cities, especially back in the day, however you want to define that, most people grouped up by their racial identity. And so that's also another important indicator of letting us know like how deep these ties go. And even though these two didn't grow up at the same time per se, like they're not the same age, their families have grown up in the city of Baltimore for a very long time. So they've had many different interactions with each other, even if through a historical context of dads knowing dads and uncles knowing uncles and dances and all that stuff.
Yeah, kind of a lighter version of a Hatfield McCoy's type situation where
I don't think it even has to be that dramatic. It's the families. Families have known each other for a long time. All these families have grown up in the neighborhood or heard the same stories, and so to your point, that was a way for Sabaka to be like, I don't come in here flashing your badge like I'm supposed to be scared of your badge,
Right. Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about all the little history, which made it personal, which again was that the smartest move in the world.
Yeah.
But he definitely made it personal.
Yeah. I mean, I think they both. I think they both made it personal. So I think it's a.
Yeah, and that's fine. But now we got to think about positional power here, right? Like it's one thing for it's one thing for Valchek to make it personal. It's another thing for Frank Sabaka to make it personal because the repercussions. Anyways,
Yeah.
we can get to that
Yeah,
as
we'll get to that.
as episode as series goes.
You have Beatty Russell, and McNulty back at the port, and the port police going over the crime scene. Now McNulty, once he climbs on top of the can, sees that something's wrong with the in terms of the air pipe being broken, and that has his wheels spinning. Beatty questions why he even has an interest, what's his interest in the case, considering that he's a part of the Marine unit. And of course, he says, the Marine unit has no interest in the case, and this is continuing on your theme of pettiness in regards to, this is him coming after his old squad, in particular one Rawls. This is a setup for up and coming scene with Doc Frazier as well.
Yeah, setup.
So big scene. Valchek and Krawcheck. So Andy Krawcheck is a real estate developer. Valchek. Now we see some of Valchek's connections and political wise, and some of the moves that he's trying to make. He goes to Krawcheck, tries to get Krawcheck to make moves against Sabaka to get the window taken down. Krawcheck basically says there's no way that a priest is going to give back that amount of money or any money, and he tells Krawcheck about the type of money that Sabaka has. Krawcheck like Valchek is kind of, is wondering how could he have that type of money as well. But again, Krawcheck is about the money, so he's not looking that deep into it himself. We learn about the greenery as well. The green pier the fact that the green pier is going to be the greenery, which is going to be some condos. So getting back to see episode 1, so that that's going to be that trashes Sabaka's dream of a green pier, because remember, of a green pier, or Nat's or his other dude Nat's dream of a green pier. They just, because they're going to make it into some condos, and we understand. We also we also are made aware of the connections that Sabaka has, as Krawcheck told Valchek that Sabaka had made political contributions to. A lot to chew on from this scene in regards to the politics and Valchek's reach as well. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is setting up. I think he always knew condos was a possibility, and so I don't know if it necessarily dashes the dream per se, but it definitely makes him more desperate, and that'll be a big huge factor in the move that Sabaka makes. Is directly tied to the desperation that he feels for his union, and so what that scene and scenes like that are doing are illustrating to us the truncated timeline that Frank is feeling / manufacturing for himself, in order to justify a lot of different actions that he's going to make. So that's that part of that, and then it opens us up a little bit to like, all right, well, in Valchek's very simple world of Frank has done something to me. And the way he's doing it is in Valchek's world, he's stealing stuff off the pier to get money to afford this window. And what we're being shown is it's way, way deeper than that for Frank. This actually has nothing to do with the window to embarrass Valchek. The window was to grease the wheels of the local church so that he could get in with certain people. But of course, Valchek can't see that at all. So it's letting us in, giving us it's starting to give us that deeper dive into it as the episodes go by.
Yeah, McNulty, B. Russell, and of course Doc Frazier, they determined that the girls were indeed killed, and that it is absolutely turned into a homicide.
Yep, shut up.
So Burrell and Valchek, Valchek again shows his connections as he goes directly to soon to be Commissioner Burrell, who's going to be commissioner. And he goes and asks Valchek, he goes and asks Burrell for a detail. And to Burrell basically says, what is this about? He gives him, some stuff about Valchek gives Burrell about half the story. It doesn't go all the way in terms of why, but gives him enough to satisfy Burrell. Burrell says, okay, I'll give you 6 men for 6 weeks. And Burrell finishes the scene asking, what is Frank Zabaka to you? And Valchek simply says, he's an asshole. and at least he laughs before he leaves the office.
Yeah, I think the important part of this scene is the inner political workings of the police department, right? Like the big thing about it is that this doesn't have to or have anything to do with any particular investigative point, or like we're identifying a problem and we're going to use our powers as police to investigate that problem. This is a quid pro quo. Valchek starts off the scene as Burrell is talking about his term and what he needs to do to be reelected. Valchek says he can get his friends in the first to back off another candidate. And then Burrell, they both laugh, and Burrell goes, so what, if anything, can I do for you? So he knows what's up. Valchek is going to do this for him. Burrell needs to do something for Valchek. And so when asking what has he done, it's very half-heartedly. It's like it doesn't even matter what he's done.
No.
It's actually an acknowledgement of like this is not anything about doing good police work or doing work that is considered like an integral part of the police department. This is quite literally just doing a favor for somebody.
Yeah, this is politics. This is exchange of favors. Valchek wants what he wants done, and you have Burrell who wants to be named commissioner. He still hasn't. I mean, he's going to be named commissioner, but it still hasn't been official yet. So he still needs a little bit of help from that standpoint. And Valchek is somebody who can get him closer to that position. To your point. So this was politics, and but Burrell didn't seriously care about the particulars or details of the case. To your point, you have Rawls. Okay, yeah. You have Daniels and Marla discussing his future. They presumably came back from dinner, or they have came back from dinner. She said you ordered more than you ate, and he's at a point to where she says, you need to make moves in regards to what you're going to do. You played your hand, and this is where you ended up in, the basement. And Daniels concedes that she was right, and reluctantly he's going to put in his papers and pursue law. She explains all his options as far as, you have a law degree. Um, you have the law degree. Of course, he has presumably 25 years in, 25 to 30 years in, maybe 20 to 25 years in. So he has that experience from that standpoint. So she says, basically trying to wrap up, basically, you played your hand and you got burnt. So you need to make other moves. And he concedes and says, I will put in my papers. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I just tried to see that.
He does this, but you can tell that he doesn't want to do it. Like, he doesn't really want to do it. Even in that scene, he wasn't all the way in on it. But at this point, it's like, he's in the basement, and all the points that she made were legitimate points from legitimate points. You have Johnny 50, Ziggy, Nat, and Nick. Nick Sabaka, and some of the other, and Horseface, and some of the other stevedores go to Dolores's bar, and before they're going to work, they drink some beers with some raw eggs, take some shots, and you have Ziggy there trying to get Nick to go in on him with a package from this local drug dealer. Of course, Nick Sabaka blows him off, says he wants nothing to do with that, and then you have Ziggy ordering a shot.
Yeah. I mean, like, mostly it's set up. It's give you a little bit more in depth of, the destructiveness that is Ziggy. And at this point in time, Nick, the thought I had is, this point in time, Nick's not desperate enough yet.
No, Nick is still, focusing with the Greeks and with his uncle. Um, and it's a lot of setup with that from the standpoint, in terms of Ziggy. So then following that scene, you had the dock workers who are pulled over by the cops immediately for DUI checks. Again, it's Carver. Carver was part of this. It's 8:00 in the morning, and they've clearly been drinking. So this is again part of the back and forth with Sabaka and Valchek.
Yeah.
Next, we have Rawls talking to Port Commander Robbie, who gets Rawls to try to take on the murders, take on the 13 murders. Of course, Rawls completely blows him off and says, "There's no way I'm taking on that. No way that I'm taking on those murders." This is a setup for some things to come later on in the episode.
Yeah. This is settled. I'll talk a little bit more during the next big meeting of all of them.
So you have Avon and Weebay. Good to be kingpin in jail. Avon is eating Kentucky Fried Chicken, drinking soda in his room, just living it up. Weebay comes in, despondent, clearly, depressed about Tillman, killing his fish. So depressed that he hasn't even touched none of the food. I mean, Avon, he has some of the good Kentucky Fried Chicken, and Weebay wants no part of that. And but Avon assures him that, I'll look into it. Who's basically, Avon says, I'll look into it. We'll keep bringing in more stuff to a point to where they won't be able to tear it down quick enough. Weebay lets him know why you know, why this dude is after him. Apparently, Wee-Bey killed his cousin. Avon jokingly says, I, need a scorecard to keep up with your lethal ass. I don't remember him, which, I mean, how could you remember any of Wee-Bey's murders, considering how many there was? So Avon assures him again that he'll look into it. He'll try to talk to him. Don't worry about it. Most important part of this scene to me was the fact that Wee-Bey says that Tillman was dealing on the side. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is where Officer Tillman's petty's gonna get him in trouble. Yep. Yeah. That was the reveal. That was the big one.
You have Frazier, McNulty, Russell. Again, they've determined that these are homicides. McNulty sends some paperwork over to the port police or to the I'm assuming to the port authority about the coordinates that prove that the bodies belong to Baltimore police, as he's faxing them over. So you had that going to the port authority. So you had that going on with that's going to be a setup for the scene that you're talking about. That's going to be a big scene. Again, McNulty, being McNulty, this is keeping McNulty busy and occupied, in his mind beyond the pettiness. I mean, we know how petty it is.
Don't do that, bro. Don't do that. Don't do that. He's being clearly petty.
He's being petty, but it's also keeping.
That's his only motivation here. Because I wanted to make a minor note. You said he's obviously doing it to port authorities. No, he's not. He's texting it to everybody.
Yes.
He wants to make it so that Rawls has no out. Everybody's getting that message.
Yeah.
This is completely about him. This is completely about him being petty. Real.
So we find out.
Not yet. McNulty's not yet. He is nowhere involved in the. Anyways.
Yeah, so to your point, we find out.
Not yet. Not even close yet. He's just all about messing up Rawls, and we'll find that out in a scene coming up very, very quickly.
So yeah, he sends it off to a number of different agencies that we will come to find out.
Everybody in that room got it.
We have Avon and Tillman. Avon is waiting for one of the officers to tip him off on Tillman, on who Tillman is. The officer does lets Avon, signals to Avon when Tillman comes in the picture. Avon then proceeds to try to talk to Tillman. He respectfully walks up to Tillman, says, can we, Officer Tillman, can we speak? Can we parlay? That was his exact words. Tillman says, Barksdale, right? And Avon says that, that's right. And then Tillman basically blows him off and keeps it moving. And this is the funny part about this scene. But Avon is calm as you can be and says, "Pardon me." He says, "Pardon me," and then Tillman walks off, and then the court, then not pushes over. Gets not pushes, but gets another inmate out of the way in terms of when he's walking up the steps. So at this point, Avon's wheels are spinning on trying to come at this dude. What are your thoughts on how Avon dealt with this interaction?
Wow, I was not thinking about it from Avon's perspective at all. There's a couple of interesting things that's going on in this scene. One is Avon is supposed to be speaking out on behalf of his boy, but in this scene I get the impression that the thing that's going to get his wheels moving is the disrespect he felt that the guy was giving him. So that's interesting. And then the second thing is, I, of course, know what the plan will become. and the plan becomes really, really self-serving. So I just noticed that in this scene, in that interaction between the two. Well done between those two actors.
Yeah, I mean, I think initially he was going to he was going there speaking on behalf of Weebay initially, but once he blew him off the way he blew him off, that took it to a whole nother level, and we'll see we'll see the payoff from that standpoint. We'll see how that turns out, of course. And Avon handled it like a boss. Okay, and went about his business. No back talk or no overreaction, anything like that. So you did okay, and kept it moving. Rawls and the port commander. You have Rawls, the port commander, the county police, and the Coast Guard are all in one room, and because McNulty has sent this information with the coordinates, is determined that Rawls has to take all the murders. What was the point you wanted to make about this scene? This was a big scene.
Yeah, I tie those two together. The earlier one and this one is just I've already said my theme on this episode is the petty and where does that petty get you, right? And the unintended consequences, right? Because Rawls was so Rawls and petty throughout this episode with everybody else who are his acknowledged peers. That group is not his subordinates who he can just order around. And so they have the same type of influence and connections he has in their various departments. And so I found it interesting that Raw's usual tactics got him stuck with 14 Jane Does. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was about McNulty. I think because
of course you do.
The initial scene was about when he's in there with just the one dude, the port commander, Robbie.
Right.
Robbie's trying to get him to take the murders.
Right.
I don't think Rawls was being petty by saying there's no way I'm taking all these murders. Like I wouldn't take.
It was the coffee comment.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yes.
But it's the overarching tone, Cyril. It's what we know of Rawls. It's how he operates in this world. It's how he goes about managing everybody. It's what we know. Is it very specifically petty that he doesn't want to take these murders? Of course it's not petty that he doesn't want to dip his below percentage. I would argue the entire enterprise is petty, and that's the point of this episode, is that it actually should be about solving these 14 murders, and it's not. It's about everybody not wanting these murders, which is petty as all hell for a police department, a city, a criminal, or part of the justice part of the jurisdiction of the city not actually wanting to fight for justice. Like that in itself is petty as all hell. And that would be the argument for the episode. But in particular, just with Rawls right here, Rawls' usual tactic is what he took against the one person who's head of his department. I forget what department it was. He was able to bully him into getting his way. But when faced with everybody there, who are, again, his acknowledged peers, not his subordinates, that have the same type of connections and the brain power and the abilities he does, it's a much more fair fight, and Rawls gets what he deserves because Rawls is Rawls.
So you have Ziggy and White Mike. White Mike, of course, is a local drug dealer that Ziggy messed up. Ziggy got a package from. We come to find out that Ziggy tries. This is your guy Ziggy.
Yeah.
He tries to get he tries to get a new package, despite the fact that he's fucked up 2 previous packages.
Yeah, every package he gets, he messes up.
And White Mike was like, no, like what? No, I can't. I'm not fucking with you. No, I'm not fucking with you anymore from that standpoint. Ziggy was like, I thought we were friends, and White Mike had a perfect retort, basically saying, basically, are you still breathing? Or you're still walking, right? Like, dude, you fucked up too. The only reason that you didn't get fucked up because we are, we were friends or had a prior relationship going back. So I think with this scene, this scene was gives more insight on Ziggy in terms of where his head is at right now and what direction that he's going in regards to future episodes. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, Ziggy's screw up. I mean, like, that's the great thing about Ziggy is like you don't actually have to guess at any of his motives or anything. Ziggy's very much who he is now will be pretty much who he is the entire series. So like I said, he's a study in pure unadulterated self-destruction. There's no chill on that gas pedal at all, and this is showing us just another this is showing us another aspect of if Ziggy touches it, it's going to go to crap.
Yeah. You have Avon and Stringer meeting outside through the gates this time, in between the gates. Avon, they discuss Tillman. Avon, tells him, what's going on with Tillman and put Stringer on that. He also brings up the fact that Donette, needs to do her part as far as bringing her son to see D'Angelo. He explains what he talked about with Brianna as far as we need to do our part in regards to D'Angelo. And then the key part of the scene at the end was D'Angelo. Stringer questions Avon about D'Angelo and basically asks him, is he too far out of reach at this point? And Avon says no, he's family. And we're left with that scene.
Yeah.
And he tells him about
Yeah.
He tells him about the drug, the dude in as well. No, I don't think he discussed that.
Nah.
He discussed that with Brianna. Yeah, a lot of foreshadowing, a lot of setup with this particular scene. A lot of setup because it's from D'Angelo and Donette. So you have McNulty, Bunk, and Freeman at the bar. McNulty, of course, they talk to him about Rawls having to pick up all 14 murders, and they have McNulty take 14 shots of Jameson, which don't recommend anybody do that. 14 shots of Jameson, which he does, and basically, and to your point, and you made this point throughout the course of season 1 and even season 2, when there are a lot of jokes going on, there's a underlining, subtext that the show is trying to make. For this particular scene, Lester, McNulty says the epigraph, they chew you up, but they gotta spit you out. He says, McNulty says, I'll do my 11 years and put in my papers. And Lester basically says, that's a long time to be on the shelf. And I think I thought after he said that kind of, hit me, resonated with McNulty. And then, he says back to Lester, tell me about it, Mr. 13 years. And then he leaves out, of course, and then Lester finishes off with, in 4 months. What are your thoughts on this scene?
Yeah. There's a lot going on here in this scene. So just to get back to the kind of like the beginning of it, like like this also illustrates the point of like what I was talking about in terms of like the pettiness and like everything like that. Like literally, like McNulty's taking the 14 shots for each of the bodies that he dumped on Rolf, and to a much more significant part they dumped on Cole. Which is why, like, simultaneously it's like a jokey atmosphere, but the other part of that is they're making him drink these shots because he's fucked up for doing that. Like, you're fucked up for doing that, and you gotta pay some type of tax for doing that to another policeman. Just because you want to be petty and get it to Raw, get back at Raw. But of course McNulty can't see any of that. He's just very, very excited that Rawls is sad and that Jay is sad. That's what was getting him very, very happy and excited about that. And so this all plays into the self-destruction, right? Like McNulty, this is not apply to plan or anything like that. Again, this goes back into the way that I'm using petty in this episode, where petty is I'm doing something just to satisfy the feeling of the notion of revenge or get back for me, with no long-term view, no view of the consequences that can come from that. And so what Freeman was saying was, no, you're never coming back from this one. Like, you're never, like, this is such a damaging move that you're never coming back from this one. And McNulty's thing is, it's like, yeah, fuck it, I'll put my papers in 11 years. And what Freeman's saying is 11 years is a long time. Dude, it's a long time to be in a place you don't want to be in, which obviously we know. But the thing is, McNulty didn't think any of this through. He just wanted to get back. That's just his reaction. That's the very definition of being petty as all hell. And so that's a lot of what's going on in that scene, as I see it.
Yeah, and we will see the collateral damage of McNulty's actions later on in this episode.
Yeah, there's collateral damage everywhere.
Frank Sabaka gets the dock workers out of jail. One of them had to stay in because they had a previous charge. But they get them out of jail, and they discuss the voucher dispute. And one of the guys gets mad at Frank. I think it was Nat, the dude he had the argument with in season one, not season one, but episode 1 about the Green Pier or whatever. And he basically says to Sabaka, you better get a hold of this shit, because this is heavy. This is twice now in one day. This dude, has been fucking with us in terms of the DUIs and in terms of those parking tickets on their own lot. So that's gonna be a setup, a continuation for things to come with Valchek and Sabaka. Bunk and Freeman. So because now they have the 14 murders in for the Western, they know that Landsman knows that you can't put those on Cole. That Cole is not not that level of detective. So he chooses his best people, which are Bunk and Freeman, and Bunk and Freeman get assigned with the 14 cases with the Jane 14 Jane Does.
Yeah. Hold on. So I did have something to say about this scene. If I could cut a scene out and just like tag it as a warning for my past self and a warning for anybody else who comes up in these types of situations, this would be the scene where Jay is telling them how great police detectives they are in order to give them more work, in order to give them essentially an unsolvable case, right? And so it's like, so I say that for like my past self is like when people would come up to me and be like, oh, you're doing such a great job, and this, you're the only one we can trust with this impossible, horrible task. Like, I just wish I had this be like, no, they do not really think you're great. They're saying that to get you to do this. So I just enjoyed that because, of course, Bunk and Freeman are veterans, and they obviously see this for what it is. This is their first words out of their mouth was, "This is not fair. We're not up." And you know how Raw sticks to that simple rule of how they do policing in the murder policing in Baltimore at that time or whatever. So I found it interesting that they're breaking their sacred way of doing business over here. But I mean, it's twofold, right? Like it's like hey, it kind of is accurate. Are they going to solve 14 homicides? Not likely. But if they are going to solve it, it's going to be with their very best. So that's one. So there's a part of it that rings true. The bigger piece is, let's be honest, Rawls, he can't directly get back at McNulty right now. So collateral damage to the nth degree. He's sticking it to his peoples. So that's the big one, and Jay is just there smiling, giving that message to them. So yeah, collateral damage.
So yeah, McNulty and Perlman. McNulty, of course, went over Perlman's house after he got drunk with the 14 shots, spent the night. She chides him for not having sex, and also he basically, he tells her that he and his wife are going to try to get back together. Are going to try to make another go at that relationship. And, she questions him before he says that, she questions him on the status of their relationship, or what is the status of their relationship. So she says, "I'm not your girlfriend. I'm not this. I'm not that. Like, what am I? What are we doing here?" Basically. And he says, we're good together. And then he tells her, then he tells her about his wife. She goes in the other room, closes the door, and you can see her anger in that particular moment as he's asking for for some aspirin. Felt like at this point it was basically like, you know what, fuck this. This is not going to happen anymore with McNulty. That's the kind of sense that I got, even when I saw this the first time. Like she was just done with him from that standpoint. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that came to my head as I was watching it, I was like, and there goes the relationship of McNulty and what's her last name?
Perlman.
Perlman. Like this was the last. This is the last of them. Physically on the show. As anything relating to couple-ish. But yeah, basically she's just running him down as why he's such a horrible person. So yeah, this is the end of them.
Horseface in the next scene steals the police van off the lot, which I found it was hilarious. I was like, so there's a couple parts. This is a short scene, but it was hilarious from this standpoint. Not only does he steal the police van, Valchek's police van, by the way, is all in Valchek's lot, or wherever, that southeastern district sector. He steals the police van, gets in there, and one of the officers waves at him on his way out, which I found hilarious. So I'm like, so no one recognized, like, yeah, I mean, no one recognized that it would, that he wasn't a cop. Like they just, see you, later. I just found it hilarious. And again, this goes back to the recurring theme of, back and forth with Valchek and Sabaka, which, still in a police van. We'll see how that's, you talk about petty. Like we'll see how that turns out. What were your thoughts on this quick scene?
Yeah, I mean, like, it is very quick scene, and the scene sells itself. But just as you were talking, again, like I have to like dig in a little bit because like this episode is ranked low. Again, in the context of The Wire, what does that mean? but it's low, and I know why. I know why these last two have been so low is because they're like heavy setup, and I get it from that aspect. But like the things that we're talking about when you watch them again after you watch this season take on such a tragic note, right? Like Frank literally says, I think in the scene before that, or like whatever scene he has before that, maybe in this scene where he goes to Valchek. He doesn't go to Valchek. It's like after he gets word about what Valchek has done. Oh no. It's when they're walking after he's done bail for all of them. He's like, Valchek wants a war. He's gonna get a war when Homeboy was just saying, you just need to get this resolved. So they stop messing with us. Just crush whatever this is. And in Frank's mind, it's like, okay, let's go to war with the police department. Like, why would you do anything like that? Like, that's not smart at all. And just that's what I was thinking initially when I'm watching it. Now, knowing the entire story, it's incredibly tragic. All of these digs don't put the fire out. It makes the fire brighter and hotter. And we want to talk about self-destructive. This is the epitome of it. Everything Frank does leads to his demise. Like everything he does directly. That's the Ziggy is the obvious version of it. Frank is the version, right? Like Ziggy is the one we give ourselves permission to laugh at in his self-destruction and everything like that. And it's just like, look at Ziggy. But Frank's doing the exact same thing at every step of the way in this entire process. If he backs down, if he just lets it go, with Valchek, everything else proceeds accordingly. But because he couldn't let it go, everything does not proceed accordingly. That's why these first two episodes, I get that they're ranked low, but they mean so much. They build so much. And if you are just of the mindset of, oh, this isn't like season one, or these aren't the same people I know, or you're going to miss so much. And you're going to miss a really, really good season. And it's because of little chunks of little scenes like this, like, yeah, like initially, yup. But once you watch it and you watch it over again, all this stuff is incredibly important and meaningful. And so that's why I would encourage people to be looking at with like Frank and like these different digs, him and Valchek going back and forth early. Yep, it's very petty. It's very like surface level, petty. You do this, I do that, you everything like that. But as you dig deeper through the entire series, arguably with a lot of different themes, but just this particular season, it's incredibly tragic because every move Frank does brings him closer to his own self-destruction in a very, very, very tangible way.
Yeah, and we'll see later on what he does with the policeman, which is, even added more gasoline on the fire. I didn't get why, like, maybe when I first saw this, I was like, you're really gonna steal a policeman from Valchek? Like, because at this point, we're like a season and a couple episodes into Valchek, as far as like, the guy's he's an asshole. He's an asshole, and somebody that you don't really want to piss off if you can avoid it. And
how about this, Ril? I don't want to steal any police department's van in America.
No.
Like, it doesn't matter. Who Valchek is or how he is doing. This is just not a good idea.
No, it's a horrible idea. It's a horrible idea, especially him knowing Valchek as well as he knows Valchek. Like, Valchek. So yeah, to your point, it's a horrible idea regardless of who it is, but it even it's even dumber considering who we're talking about here. So you have okay, yes. So you have Bunk, Freeman, and B.D. Russell. They realize that so Landsman gives them the number. Cole gives them the number to the Port Police. Probably in the prior scene, Cole and not Landsman, Bulk ask, is she at least pretty when they get her name? So they meet. So you have Bulk and Freeman meet up with B.D. Russell, and they begin to kind of like discuss what they're going to do, where are going to be the next steps towards this. Of course, none of them, especially Bulk and Freeman, want no part is. Russell at this point is still trying to figure shit out. What were your thoughts? This is a very quick scene. What were your thoughts on those three being together?
This one I read more setup for the future.
No question. Valtech, Prez, and a new detail. So Valtech, like we discussed earlier, gets his new detail from Ril. He gives them some nicer digs than what the detail had in season 1 by far, even though the place is a little bit dirty. He puts Prez in charge of them, and we see a bunch of guys, just a bunch of random faces. And we see our buddy from season 1, Polk. Yeah, Polk. And by the way, we recognize Polk, and Polk, in a classic Polk line, who fills out the overtime slips? Yeah. So Polk.
Let's get to what we really worried about here.
Polk is Polk still looks like he drinks.
Yeah.
still looks like he's hitting the bottle.
Enjoys the occasional cocktail or two.
So yeah, and you look at this crew, and you could even tell, even without watching the series 5-6 times, you could tell these guys, are just here. Prez is the leader, so that lets you know all you need to know. If Prez is as good as well as Prez developed in season 1, he's not a boss. So, but he makes Prez the leader. Good to have a son-in-law or a father-in-law in charge, and I like what he said about Prez. The kid's a prodigy. So he's selling them. Valchek immediately sells them on how great Prez is. During that particular scene. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, it almost looks like like the band back together from the beginning of season 1, right? So it already gives you that sense that this group's not going to be around for too long. They look like the sharpest group, especially if Prez is the one leading it. Yeah, that's dicey. That's dicey.
You have Sabaka, Nick, and Horseface getting back to the police van. They find out that not find out, but they bring the van back to the docks. They put it in a can. They open the can, and they put a Union sticker on the police van and take a picture of it. What are your thoughts on this scene?
Set up. We know what's going to happen.
Yeah. But again, the just increasingly, not is one thing to steal the van. You're gonna put the Union sticker on it. So you're basically saying, we did this. Sergey, our man Sergey, the enforcer from the Greeks, chases down one of the crewmen at the Philadelphia port. Chases him down, and they get a hold of him. So they get a hold of him and beat him up. But the important part of this scene, for future references, is Sergey was caught on tape, which he doesn't know. So remember that for the future, that he was caught on tape but doesn't realize it. What were your thoughts?
Yeah. Everything that you said, 100%. That's what it was about.
Again, this will set up the final scene of the episode. D'Angelo, we see the first appearance of D'Angelo. Up until this point, he's in his cell, or he's not in. Yeah, he is in his cell, and he's with another prisoner, and they're about to do some drugs. So D'Angelo, does the drugs, and then as soon as soon as he puts his head up, you have Avon, walk in, basically catches D'Angelo using. Doesn't say anything about it, but basically just says, "Hey, we need to talk." Says, "How you doing?" And then he says, "We need to talk." And then Avon Avon walks out. So another scene that will, a quick scene that will go, a quick scene that will have a lot of setup. Any thoughts on the scene?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big scene, right? Like because we're seeing D'Angelo used for the first time. So that's letting us know the type of headspace that he's in. And it's also it's also they're going to be very judicious with the use of last year's people in this season, and I think you can already get a sense of it. So every one of these scenes are going to be really important. And no matter how short or long they are, they're going to be very, very important. And so this is just kind of like prepping us for that with D'Angelo right now. Like when we see D'Angelo, we see him in a very, very different space than we've ever seen him before.
Yeah. Call back to season 1 with Wallace. When Wallace started using after watching Brandon, after seeing the body of Brandon, and that took him to his his demise. It was a part of his demise. Similar to we see D'Angelo again using somebody who's to your point, is in a bad place, is mentally in a bad place right now. He begins to use for the first time. Also, it just continues to show the power of Avon basically to be wherever he wants. I mean, Avon, he can Kentucky Fried Chicken. He's in another person's cell. So again, continues to show that theme of how much, even though Avon is in jail, he still has a lot of control and a lot of power behind those bars. As much as somebody can have behind bars without being free. Um, Bunk Freeman and Russell in Philadelphia. So they go down to Philadelphia and um, begin their investigation. Any thoughts on that?
No, that's the beginning kind of the scene.
You have Sergey, the crewman, Spiros, and the Greek. So something's big is going to happen when you have Spiros and the Greek in the same scene and traveling all the way down to Philadelphia. Okay, they come down to Philadelphia. The Greek finesses the dude into giving up the information. Basically, the guy they beating the shit out of him, stripped him butt naked, sitting in a chair. Sergey is smacking the shit out of him, and to no avail at this point. Sergey's got nothing out of him. And even the Greek comes in and says, Sergey tells him that he's not saying anything, and the Greek says, well, yet you still continue to hit him. So the Greek comes in, gets to do his clothes, kind of, Lester tells the dude, you're going to tell us, you're going to tell us what we need to know, but not in a demanding way. Just kind of like, you're going to tell us what we need to know. Offers him a cigarette, and then you see, he sees some of his tattoos or whatever. Recognize that the guy is a Turk, and the guy starts spilling off some of the information what transpired on the ship. Turns out that the girls were being he was selling the girls in exchange for basically prostitution with some of his crew members, and one of the girls did not want to go along with that, so she gets killed and gets tossed off the boat. She's the one that we found that McNulty and his partner found in the opening scene of last episode, and the other 13 were killed. Were basically collateral damage. Getting back to the episode's title. So the Greek says, you know what, tell me what you need to know, and then I'll be done with it. And again, we knew what was coming. He has Spiros kill the dude, slices his throat, and then tells Sergey, no fingerprints, no face. And what you see in the Greek is you see somebody, you see in the scene is just like these girls were. It's not so much that these girls were got killed that bothered the Greek. I think the part that bothered him was in which the matter, the business in terms of first of all they were losing money, but the Greek says we can get other girls. So these girls, we learn more about the human trafficking and what these girls are going to do once they get to the States. But that's just a number figure for the Greek. I think he was pissed off about the matter in which this went down than even more so than the actual murders. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, this kind of gives us a window into the. I don't want to cheapen the show by calling it like the big bad or the final boss of this season, but it's like, all right, who the target? The target. Uh, this gives us kind of a more of an in-depth look at who will eventually become the target and why they need to be the target. So that's one aspect of it. The second is it when I was watching this time, like I was just like, wow, they really clearly outlined everything early on. And I think noticing it this time, I started thinking about, well, why is that? They kind of didn't lay out the entire thing for us in the first season. Why would they do it now? And I think the reason why I'm focusing on that is because this season way more than last season, which was about the different moves the police were making. This is going to be about the internal motivation of our characters and why they do the things that they do, particularly on this case. So much less about matching wits with the organization and much more about how the characters' own personal growth actually strengthening them as investigators. So that anyway. So I was looking at that. I was thinking about that as the overarching of the season. Because I was just like watching. I was just like, wow, like this the whole thing. This is it right here. This is from start to finish. This is the whole case. And I was just struck by just like how thorough and how detailed they were in it at the like what is the very beginning of the season. And so that's the part that just kept coming out to me this time around.
Yeah, the Greek, it's interesting with the Greek. He, up until this point, we've seen Avon, we've seen Prop Joe, we've seen Daniels, Rawls, in terms of the kingpins and some of the leaders within the show. He's a different type of leader and boss. Early in the show, I mentioned that he goes out of his way not to be noticed. But when he does something, and we see in this scene, it has an impact. Like this kind of like there's no wasted motion with the Greek in terms of the moves that he's making, and he's just about the business, and he allows Spiros, he allows Spiros to be, he has the ultimate trust in Spiros and Spiros' ability to kind of like oversee just that part, the major part of their organization. So I thought that it was interesting this episode just watching him move from the opening scene up until this final scene in terms of how he's in terms of how he's going to operate. Yeah, any thoughts on the Greek or?
Nothing more than what I said.
So they killed. So I think the important part of that scene was the fact those last words, no fingerprints, no face. That will play. We're going to see. We're going to see how that plays along over the course of the season. In terms of MVP, Chardine Award, who was your MVP? Who was your MVP of the episode?
This episode was trickier. Even trickier than last episode.
It was.
So, yeah, I just don't know if this episode was designed for there to be a significant MVP. So I'll split the Charlene Award between like what I was saying, between Weebay and Avon. Because how they did that scene actually did, was it Weebay and Avon?
Which one? You talking about the one with Tillman? You talking about Tillman, or you talking about what he?
Yeah, sorry, Tillman, and you're right. Sorry, Tillman and Weebay.
Tillman.
Not Avon. I gotta take Avon out of that one. It's the Tillman and this is the Chardine Award, because the way they did that scene, the way they interacted with each other, laid down the foundation for everything that's gonna kind of like the upcoming. Like, you had to believe that those two were this gives me a good one for the MVP now too. So you had to believe that those two were Avon and Tillman. That's the two. I want to get the shot. That's how it's going on. I don't know why I kept wanting to put Weebay in there. Yes, Avon and Tillman. So you had to believe the performance that Avon gave, where you're like, he came to him very demure, very respectful, like to that, and you had to believe how Avon was coming off, and so that you could feel the disrespect that Tillman gave when Tillman blew off Avon, coming at him hat in hand, almost like you had to believe that in order for everything else that happens to believe. And so they had to play that perfectly, and they did. And so then for the MVP one, that I'm gonna do Valchek and Sabaka in their interaction, because you have to believe, especially the scene where Frank is telling him about himself, and Valchek's reaction to being told about himself, in that historical sense. Like, that is the whole beginning of that tragic arc. And if that doesn't work, then you don't buy any of it. So that has to work. So anyways, that thinking about Avon and Tillman made me think about Sabaka and Valchek. So they get I'm splitting the MVP between those two. I'm splitting the Chardine between Avon and Tillman.
Yeah, I have no grievances, no gripes with those picks. Very, again, to your point, very difficult to come out with either one of these awards for this particular episode, considering how much setup was in it, and how many. And we're going to see that play. We're going to see how that plays out with these remaining episodes. But I had the Greek as the MVP for that particular scene, the ending scene, just how he handled that.
Yep.
The Chardine Award, I actually had McNulty in the bar. I think that even you want to look at that and say he was just drunk, but I like the subtlety of the performance when Lester told him that you're basically gonna be stuck for 11 years doing something that you don't want to do. And I think that, regardless of whether he didn't say anything, after that, I believe he didn't say anything. After that, he didn't say, I think he had already said to chew you up, spit you out. And then Lester said that's a long time to be on, to be on the shelf. But just, I think that kind of hit him even through 14 shots. I felt like there, I liked the subtlety of that performance in that scene with McNulty. But again, it was very difficult for this particular episode because of how much they went out their way to give you things that will pay off as the episodes move along. As episodes move along, you're going to see the collateral damage. Not only, we saw it in this episode, but you're going to see the collateral damage throughout the course of the season in terms of some of the decisions that were made even in this episode alone. So I think that pretty much covers it for episode 2, Collateral Damage. As always, thanks to Robert Sapp.
All right.
All right, we're 2
Take
episodes.
it easy, stay healthy.
Definitely. Take it easy.
All right, sir.
That's going to wrap it up for this latest edition of the Ril Dil podcast. I will have this podcast up probably in a couple hours. Catch it on my YouTube channel as well as as well as anywhere you listen to a podcast, iTunes, Stitchers, Blog Talk Radio as well. Take it easy. See you next time.